and welcome to another episode of Azure Flash News. I am Amanda Rosemark, and I'm here with Mr. Doug Splinter.
Yes, I am not. I'm not Rick. You're not Mark.
But we still have some great Azure news to talk about
We do
today.
some fun stuff, and
Yeah.
we were talking through, like, we have academic curiosity about a lot of this, but most of the stuff, aside from the security stuff, for me is kind of like not news in our favorite areas, but it's news that you might care about.
I would say the security stuff is not my favorite area, but it's very important.
It is my favorite area, right? So we'll hit it together. So let's dive in, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So my job is to click, and then we'll kind of talk through it, and I think I can do it. So so the first up was the announcement that the Green Team solves the high-risk systemic security issues for Microsoft Azure. So
well, let's first talk about what the Green Team is.
yeah.
So those of you who don't know, Microsoft has a red and a blue team, where the red team will try and simulate attacks like any real world attacker, and the blue team will try and prevent them and keep them out. And a while ago, we added the green team, which actually looks at some of the really common root causes of some of these attacks and looks at trying to solve them and make it easier for people to work with those solutions. So one thing they identified recently, I think it's something we kind of all knew, but was having identity and credential information inside source control.
Yeah, so what that means is as developers are working through things, they're getting service accounts, credentials, the rest of the stuff. And of course, they're storing those things securely, managing them properly, and not allowing them to wait. No, they're not.
No.
No, they're not.
We wish that was how it was.
We love you all. We are developers ourselves. You know how it is. And it's what I call a prodilate mode, like when something slides into production when you were piloting it, right? And we have the best of intentions. You may have all this, resiliency and infrastructure as code, but the creds may be weakly stored.
Yep.
So what they did was they came out with a project, essentially a methodology that allowed you to use Azure Key Vault.
Right, which is our recommended method for securely storing all of those credentials in secret.
The historical challenge we were talking about is that then you had to go do a bunch of work.
Yep, you had to rewrite some code. So if you had some of these crusty old legacy apps, it was maybe a lot of work to try and move it to Azure and use this best practice. So now we have a library.
So now, because that identified, they basically put out essentially a community contribution to say, here's a way without having to do a whole ton of work. You have to do some work,
a little bit,
but you always have to do work to remediate a vulnerability. So
right.
I'm sorry that there is some work involved, but this is one of those. I'm super passionate about this, right? I mean, as far as remediating common risk portfolios and MFA and privileged access workstations and the whole 9 yards. And to me, the devs and their the credentials and the API surface that we have, that's that Key Vault stuff. And the easier we make people do the right thing.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of reducing that time and effort barrier to do the best practice and do what's right.
Because if the best practice that keeps you out of audit trouble is the easiest thing, then that is what you will do.
People shall do it.
So check this one out. I don't like necessarily the name of the post. I think the post should have been now available, way to reduce threats without changing. You know what I mean?
So it's called the App Authentication Library.
Yeah, it should have been App Authentication Library help solve security risk and now available. Instead, it says Green Team. People, I don't know what the Green Team is.
Right.
So I guess I'm a big fan of the fact that we covered this because the title doesn't tell you.
It can be a little deceptive, but it'll be really useful for developers.
But super important for you guys. So go check it out. So item 1, improve. Without breaking your CI/CD, improve security.
Absolutely.
Okay, item 2.
All right, item 2. So we are actually improving our virtual machine resiliency using machine learning. So we are using machine learning to do some predictive analytics around disk failure was one of the areas that we're focusing on first. And so we're looking to identify when a disk might fail, when it's likely to fail, and then actually preemptively start a live migration.
So we were talking about this kind of before the show. This is not something you need to worry about. It's simply what we're doing to keep you safe. And if you were running a data center historically and now you're trusting us to do it, you kind of want to know how we're doing things.
Right.
Right? I mean, sometimes you don't care, but sometimes you do.
Right.
And so like what advances are we doing? So this is us keeping you informed as to how are we evolving our best practices around data center resiliency, server resiliency, and keeping that process transparent as to what we're doing and the innovations we're building into our Azure data centers.
Right. I mean, I think people are always really impressed when they hear about live migration and they know that, okay, they maybe are only going to be slowed down or stalled for a second or two. And that's really impressive, but to kind of know how it's happening and know how they're predicting when we can do that sooner.
And if we do know that it's likely to be needed, you can trigger that synchronization attack far more elegantly than you can in a fail state
situation,
response. A thoughtful move from one house to another as opposed to a panicked move from one house to another is a very different thing. And all this is a micro version of that still.
Yeah, and I think one of the factors they were looking at was actually the time of when the live migration would happen. So if they're able to predict it early enough, the disk failure, they can time it out better.
Yeah, they
so
can
that
look
it's
at
not during a heavy usage.
Yeah,
time.
so if you're always using this, this instance between 8 and 4, Pacific time, we can wait until 2 a.m. And hit it at an idle time, provided we don't think you're going to go into a fail state.
Right.
That would be the whole ML AI predictive.
Yes. That would be the whole benefit of this.
Okay. So now we're going to shift over from live migration over to one of my favorite domains, right?
Security.
Yeah.
Lots of new announcements here.
Yeah. So let's just take them down on top of that. Key Vault references app settings in public preview. So I like this one simply because it does allow you to basically increase the security around sensitive settings that are not credentials.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Which is always important.
No, it is. Certain things that, it's not just the secrets, it's the knowledge about the environment that it might expose, right?
Right.
And there's a few of those things that's just really important that so how do you do it? You go back to all these other third-party techniques or whatever it is, and let's be honest, at the developer level, if you're in a hurry and you're doing the codilot thing, you're going to have maybe a weak slide from the one mode to the other. And so this helps with those kind of things. So I like it. It just increases the usefulness of Key Vault for more than just the keys themselves.
Well, and again, this one means that you have no new code to transition some of those legacy apps or to utilize Azure function triggers. Yep. So it's really removing those barriers there.
And so they were just kind of breaking it down in the post. I think it's a pretty good overview, and I like that this one has some of the screenshots as to how it visualizes inside of Key Vault from an abstracted standpoint. So that's a good thing. And then we were talking about this one, the user-assigned managed identities in public preview.
Yeah, that one will be interesting. So previously we've had system assigned, so they're tied to your application. So your managed identity kind of lives and breathes with your application. So if you delete your application, that identity is now gone. And so with user-assigned identities, that's no longer a problem. You can have it span multiple applications.
Because what if it is a collection of applications, and from a security posture standpoint, you want to have a more, there's either micro account assignment or there's macro assignment where it's reused. Both have their security pros and cons to them before we only gave you one choice. Now we're starting to flip it on the head. And you can combine these two things together. So you have some things that are commonly shared across an application service where there's a minimal service account. You can do audit footprinting and the rest of the kind of stuff.
Okay.
And the other one's the flipping it, binding it just to the application.
Perfect.
Obviously, if you think about certain applications that have shared security needs, it might actually be advantageous to have that shared credential. However, we were talking through it, and I had to cut full screen of this one for a moment. This is funny. I'm like, my only concern about it is this, and they put it in the blog post. Quick tip: although you can use it for multiple, be careful not to overshare identities and leak permissions to resources that don't need them. Okay, you can cut back. So I'm like, my only concern about that is people still have to do then good governance, and the blog post even said, we're giving this to you, but don't abuse it.
Right.
Because then you could defeat the purpose of.
Yeah, you can actually cause more problems than you're looking to solve.
It's like everything else, right? There's goods and bads to on top of that. Managed identities for app service on Linux and web app for containers goes into public preview.
Yep, and they actually included the user-assigned managed identities in that. So
yeah, so both. So that's the previews right there, and kind of ready to bach on top of it. And so claims principal binding for Azure functions. Well, yes. I don't know what else to say.
Going to clean up some of your code, which is great.
Yeah, that's a great thing.
Yeah, and I think the only caveat is that it's right now in the preview and it's only .NET, but I know they have more languages coming.
Why? Yeah, can I be predictive and say it's going to start supporting, Node.js and JavaScript?
Probably.
Hypothetically, I would.
That's the usual order of events around here.
That's the usual order of events around here. So neither one of us has any knowledge of that. I'm just saying if past 100 events are predicted. Right. If we were to do a regression model and likely machine learning around it, common sense might spit out on top of that. And then support for access control allowed in the CORS config, right?
Yep. So if you need to send a header token along with your API call, you can do it.
You can do it. So those, all of them, combined with the green team misnamed post,
Yeah.
offers a tremendous increase without a lot of developer impact.
Yeah, that's the best part.
Right? And so please pay attention to these. Sit down and talk about your security code review cycles and the rest of those things. This reduces your attack surface, does not decrease your application agility, actually increases it. For the ability to have these common repos for things like configs and those sort of things. So please, that's your go-do.
Yeah, they'll be valuable and worth your time to look at.
Okay, we got a couple more. You're right, it's very security focused this week.
Yeah, one more security topic, which is probably not pertinent to everyone, but it's good to know that it's going to exist, because if you need it, you'll be glad it's here. And that is hardware security module support in Azure.
Okay, so who cares?
People who have the need for
HSM.
HSM and really.
I'm going to say stringent regulatory requirements.
Yes, that's
right?
what I'm looking for.
Stringent regulatory and privacy requirements. They call out specifically, if you're in buzzword bingo land, if you have FIPS 142 L3,
Yes.
not FIPS 142, FIPS 142 L3 requirements, right? Remember, not all things are created equal. And if you don't need to do these things, you should not.
Yeah, it's really not worth it, because there's more management involved.
There's management, there's overhead, there's performance implications of doing this level of cryptographic control over the information. But if you need it, it's there.
Yep.
So do it when and where needed. I always say some of these things, like security, should be everywhere. Governance should be everywhere. Encryption should be everywhere. Certain levels of things are raising it to a standard that's only should be done if it's required.
Yeah.
Right? And so I have, like, again, I'm a huge fan of it where it's appropriate. In some cases, I say to people, treat it like truffle oil or ghost pepper. Only in the dishes where that's appropriate.
Yep.
You don't put it in everything, right?
Fair enough.
So again, just because you can does not mean you should.
Yep.
But if you need it, we now continue to offer these more advanced things. I feel exactly the inverse about the stuff we just talked about, where you can and you should go put that everywhere.
Yes, that one, jump on that, do it. This one, you maybe need to do a deeper review of it if it's necessary.
Yeah. But if you have those kind of sensitive workload requirements, game on.
I mean, in it, they call out that you will have a full administrative and cryptographic control over it. So you will, essentially, it'll be like your own HSM on premises. And they also call out that Microsoft does not have any visibility into your cryptographic keys.
Yep.
So if there's any worry about that, we do not have access to that.
And let's cut over this one full screen just for a brief moment. So they do give you the fit guidance. Says, hey, do it when these things, Brazil IT, the FIPS 140 L3, common criteria L4, NITES, like the different ones, right? And then if you're migrating from an application from on-premise to AVM where you're using HSM, right, or doing shrink wrap, not a fit, right, for things that support customer managed keys. So Azure Information Protection, no, right? And then Azure Storage, nope. Azure SQL, Azure Data Lake Store, nope.
A lot of the PaaS services really are not going to.
Correct. So you can cut back. So in other words, it's just for these scenarios. It's not an announcement that you can bring that stuff to the PaaS layer.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
All right. So everyone's like, so if you did suddenly get excited and say, I can now do this to my PaaS side, I'm bringing this to Office 365. No, it's for your VMs and instances running in your subscriptions over on the Azure half of our personality.
Right.
All right, then. I think it's just when we announce these and everybody who's a security person goes, no, I can do it everywhere. No, you can do it in the places.
Good to call out those cautions.
You need to do it. Okay.
All
so
right.
now.
So premium blob storage just got announced. So they're using some solid state drives in addition to some storage clusters to really improve the performance on blob. So if you have an application that is storing things in blob storage and maybe making calls where you need really low latency on those calls, this is going to help you with that.
Yep. So the performance we're talking about, let's cut over to this one. We were looking at, we're like, this is a little more significant than I thought. Right? And you pointed out this might get, let's talk about the performance through it. For a small object performance readout, right? So you're looking basically a 5x faster read from premium to standard.
Right.
And then for a list, you're looking at a 2.5 times faster performance.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you need speed, this is going to help you out immensely.
I've always said, blobs, like, toss it over in blob. Throw it over there, right? ADL, let's do whatever you want to.
Which is the right attitude. I mean, that is where we want to send all those things. But if you need the performance.
And you were
It
saying
hasn't been there before.
that potentially you could overlay this with
the lifecycle management that's built into Blob. So you can have certain things running on this premium Blob storage and running at that really fast rate. And maybe it's just the things that your application's interacting with at the moment.
Yeah.
And then when it's time, you can automatically have that move over to maybe warm or cool storage.
Yeah. So it lets you do some tiering.
Yep.
Right, which would be kind of nice.
Yeah.
So
it'll be great. You can get the performance without having to worry about a higher cost.
Yeah, so we were just talking about, hey, how would this impact you? So if you need more performant Blob, you have it. And if you want to look at some strategies around cost remediation for that, then you now have some options.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. So I like that one just from a flexibility, performance versus cost standpoint. And obviously there is a premium cost for 5X.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I'm assuming that at some point there will be a premium cost. But if you pair that with utilizing things like cool storage, you know, it can average out. So you can get the speed where you need it, and then cool storage is a really cheap way to do archive storage and things like that.
So you might end up with, if you do that strategy, you might end up with increase in performance and a decrease in total Azure cost, right? I mean, I'm just saying, like,
best of both worlds.
Math is your friend, right? So
it just takes a little time to set up that lifecycle management, but you could get the best of both worlds.
Now, here's one I wish Todd Kidda from my show was here to talk about, which is the
time series analysis in the Azure Data Explorer.
Yeah, I fully admit I'm not an Azure Data Explorer human, right? I mean.
Yeah, so Azure Data Explorer, for people who don't know, ADX is our service for optimized data exploration. So essentially, you can view all of your data in close to real time, and you can do a lot of analysis on it. And it's read only, so you're doing these analyses and you're not having to affect your actual data or worry about messing with that. And so one of the things that we now have included in that is some time series analysis. So you can do a lot of filtering and regression around your time series.
Yeah, seasonality, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Seasonality is the only one I've ever really played with on this. I've done some regression, but
sure,
those are the big two for me. I'm always looking for
for the right industry,
patterns.
Seasonality, I mean.
Well, actually, interesting enough, I mean, that's not
kind of for everybody, I guess.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we did this once upon a time for some huge customers who were having problems with their unified communications infrastructure.
Okay.
So we applied seasonality to like predicting when are people going to be remote, when are they going to be, because the network planning team was like, this sucks.
Absolutely.
So we kind of use this sort of stuff in a way that, no, it's, and then we had to correlate with internet service providers, which it's even small amounts of data can pose big data challenges. This stuff can be exceedingly useful.
Yeah.
And if you can get the data somewhere to do it, I always say don't make decisions without visibility.
Right.
And if you don't think you can get visibility, you probably can. There's probably a way for you to gain at least, canary, spot checks of telemetry and then infer that across populations. But around here, we do not like to make decisions. Or if you don't, then make a decision to get you the data you need.
Yeah.
You know
well,
what I mean?
especially now when Microsoft offers so much tooling like the Azure Data Explorer,
Yeah.
You're not having to build it out. You're not having to figure out where this data is, how to analyze it, how to do these regressions on it. It's a couple button clicks away to be able to do this. So we actually see a lot of customers that are looking at pulling up additional data that they maybe don't need for applications in Azure, but they're wanting it there so that they can more easily run some of these analysis and understand their data and get some insights faster.
And the time to stand it up and then throw it away is,
so fast.
It's really fast.
It's negligible.
And both of us are just shaking our head from 5 years ago, and we're all how far all this stuff's come for the ability to do that. Just the trend of this and Power BI and the rest of the stuff. So Azure Data Explorer, I think that's our rep post for the week, isn't it?
Yeah.
Time series in Azure Data Explorer. Well, we're about 10 minutes early.
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing.
That's okay. I think people are okay with having
a little extra
time in their day.
So again, please follow the Azure Flash News on Twitter. Mark and Rick should be back next week.
Yeah.
At least one of them, right?
I would assume so.
I'll be on the air for Office Flash Friday in like 30 minutes. So
excellent.
if you're just
catch that as
if you
well.
just wanna, if you want to go check out that, if you can't get enough of what's happening, we're gonna go all SaaS side there. Right?
Yeah.
I'm 365.
Otherwise, use your extra 10 minutes to look at the security.
Yeah, go check out the Green Team posts. Get that library into your Visual Studio initiatives, and we'll give you that back. So I guess I got to honor Rick and say, until next time, right?
Yeah.
Keep your hands on the keyboard and your head in the cloud, right? And so, so that's the normal sign off from Rick for an Azure Flash News. Thanks for letting me join you.
Thanks for joining us. It was great being here.
And I guess we'll see you all next Friday or in a little bit. So take care and have a great weekend.